The end.
Question mark?
No, there's no question mark. It's the end.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's the end. Save it up! And then never touch it again.
But you gotta do it. You gotta do it. We gotta do it.
I'll tell you what. It won't be anytime soon.
No.
We will come back to Illbleed. And I will finish Illbleed.
So
not tomorrow.
We're gonna put the end with a question mark on this.
It's gonna have a question mark on it. I won't make any promises. This might be one of those things we just make a promise and we forget about it one day. Don't hold me to it.
Yeah.
Because this is still fresh.
Right.
And I'm still bitter.
This is a pretty interesting change of scenery, isn't it? You're probably wondering to yourself, Travis, why are you in a dark, unfinished basement? And that's a great question. Thank you for asking. You see, 2 years ago, Joe and I embarked on a little journey called Illbleed on the Sega Dreamcast. And you may also remember that we finished Illbleed 2 years ago, and turns out that that was not the case.
Jesus. She doesn't look happy at all. She's on a deserted island, apparently.
Back to Illbleed. What?
What?
She's going back to Illbleed.
As you can see by the ending clips, Eriko is no longer with her friends. Instead, she has decided to embark straight back into the depths of hell to find Michael Reynolds and revisit Illbleed. Now the question is, how do you get the true ending to Illbleed? In order to get the true ending, you must go through Illbleed a second time using the previous save file in which you have beaten Illbleed. Not only that, there is a little twist on our little adventure. You may also remember from our previous playthrough that Eriko is not the only person that ventured into the Demented theme park. Eriko was also joined by her other 3 friends, Randy, Kevin, and Michelle, and also on top of that, our soon-to-be friend, George. How a traditional playthrough of Illbleed would go is as you venture forth through Illbleed, you'll eventually find opportunities in which you can save those 4 friends. In order to get the true ending for Illbleed, we must do the exact opposite, because Eriko must journey through Illbleed by herself. Now, just in case you are uninitiated with the story of Illbleed or just need a minor refresher, the story is rather simple. The game centers around 4 high school students, Eriko, Kevin, Randy, and Michelle. They're given tickets to visit a demented theme park called Illbleed, created by Michael Reynolds. That's about all you really need to know about the story of Illbleed. At some point in time, Eriko does go to the theme park and finds that her friends have gone missing, but like I said, we don't care about all that. This story is about Eriko specifically and her journey back to Illbleed. Now let's go over the mechanics of Illbleed and how it works. Illbleed is a very unique video game in that it has a lot of concepts that are pretty similar to horror games that you may have seen before, but it adds on a couple unique twists to the game. And a lot of it is, on the surface, very interesting, albeit a little convoluted at times, but I'll try to explain how it's gonna work. At its core, Illbleed is a horror theme park, which means it has a bunch of attractions that are custom designed for you to wander through and also be scared. And although the scares are not quite scaring and the jump scares are not quite startling, they are somewhat random in design, which means you do need a couple tools in order to survive. A key tool is the horror monitor. It's a little device that is strapped to your face that allows you to scan your surroundings to identify potential items, traps, enemies, or nothing at all. Another key item that you'll need to survive are weapons. These are tools that you can use to fend off hordes of zombies, workers, puppets, and eggs with arms. We'll get more to that later on. There's also calculators that you'll pick up that'll help you identify potential shock events that may kill you, and item sensors that will pinpoint specific item locations on your map. Each of these things are super useful and beneficial and are things that you're going to need during our journey for Illbleed. And after completing each attraction, you will also be paid a rather large sum of money that can be used to buy items or upgrades that you'll need in order to succeed in your journey. And believe me, since it's just going to be Eriko this time around, we're going to need those upgrades and we're going to need those items. Now, this video is not going to be a thorough walkthrough of the second playthrough of Illbleed. If you've played Illbleed before or you watched that first playthrough, you know what's coming. However, at the very least, going through each of these stages, I will provide some rough synopsis, thoughts, feelings, as well as any changes that occur over the second playthrough of Illbleed. With all that being said, welcome to Illbleed, the road to the true ending.
Homerun of Death is the first stage of Illbleed, and serves more as a tutorial. This stage does a lot of the work to showcase the mechanics you'll see throughout the game, from navigating hallways, to avoiding traps with the horror monitor, to even finding items to assist you, like the item sensor, weapon, or key items needed to progress. Even though it's the first stage of the game, it's probably going to be the most frustrating for newcomers, as you'll find that Illbleed on the surface seems to have a lot of tools that you can use to survive. But the items can be a bit weird to use and result in a lot of trial and error, since you lack upgrades and items that you'll have later on. The first stage follows the story of a man named Gale Banbelow, who is an innkeeper from Minnesota. Banbelow lived in the inn with his son Jimmy, who loved playing baseball. They lived in harmony until one day some teenagers who were staying in the inn decided to play with fire, resulting in the death of Jimmy as well as the destruction of the inn. Badly burned, Mr. Banbelow turned into a monster, hell-bent on getting revenge for the death of his son, hurting them the same way his son was hurt, with fire. There really isn't much to say about the stage that I haven't already said. The main goal is to collect Jimmy's belongings so that you can lure in Banbelow, so that you may finally allow him to rest. After a sequence of chases and close encounters with Banbelow, we find our first missing friend, Kevin Kirstman, who is dragged off by the monster. What would typically follow is you'd continue until you confront Banbelow and save your friend. However, as I mentioned in the intro, the condition of getting the true ending of Illbleed is to go through the game with only Eriko, meaning that we cannot save Kevin. Each of the party members that you'll encounter will have unique conditions that you'll have to do to save them. Kevin has the unique condition in that you can't avoid interacting with him, so to get past this stage without him, you must let Kevin die. Which can be accomplished by taking too long to get out of the maze where Banbelow is chasing you. After standing around for a while, you'll find Kevin deceased on the ground, allowing you to progress to the final section, where a giant Banbelow is waiting to crush you. Here you discover there's more to the world of Illbleed than simply supernatural events. You'll find a back room where a worker is piloting the animatronic of Banbelow, reminding the player that the horror isn't quite what you thought. Before we go into stage 2, this playthrough will cause something unique to happen to Eriko that we didn't encounter in the previous playthrough. The game has a strange feature, almost like a morality mechanic, where if you fail to save any of your friends in each of the stages, Eriko will become bruised and her clothes will become destroyed, which is a neat touch, and a little strange, especially when you get closer to the end. The Revenge of the Queen Worm stage is the shortest section of Illbleed, and actually does away with a horror monitor and traps for a more action-oriented stage.
No! My horror monitor! Give it back!
This stage was actually a little tricky for me, as I made a mistake and brought the wrong items. The stage doesn't actually use adrenaline like in stage 1, since the horror monitor isn't a factor. However, what is a factor is stopping your character from bleeding or managing health. I managed to get through it okay, but I did get a little nervous towards the end. This stage centers around a small town that has seen a string of massacres without any trace of suspects or answers. As you traverse the stage, you pick up clues and bits of story that help you understand what happened to the town. The story centers around a father and daughter, David and Rachel respectively. David was hit with misfortune as a big evil company came to town to cause trouble with chemicals. It's later in the story that it's revealed that David's daughter Rachel isn't a human, but rather a worm.
Rachel?
Please burn Rachel, please.
That giant worm is Rachel?
You heard that right. Rachel is a worm. That worm gets doused in chemicals, transforming Rachel into a large tremor-like monster that destroys the town and kills the townspeople. And somehow David can speak to you from the afterlife and instruct you to kill Rachel so that they can rest. This stage also allows you to rescue one of Eriko's friends, Michelle Waters, who is cornered by some evil monkey creatures that want to kill her. Usually you'd go to the location she's being held captive in and save her, however due to the nature of this run, I avoided that location entirely, resulting in her death. After defeating Rachel, she is reunited with David in a hilarious cutscene, bringing the stage to a close.
Rachel! I missed you so.
I'll be honest, the Woodpuppet stage is my least favorite of the main 6 Illbleed stages, both conceptually and in terms of its gameplay hook. The story of the Woodpuppet stage focuses on a man named George McLaughlin, who ran a sawmill. His best creation was a powerful chainsaw that could instantly tear through wood. One day he decided to take on an 800-year-old tree, which was said to be the most formidable tree to cut down. Determined to take on the challenge, McLaughlin tears into the tree when suddenly a face appeared, consuming the woodcutter.
McLaughlin, I came to this beautiful forest 7 years ago as a woodcutter. That's really all I knew how to do.
After the case went cold, new management took over the sawmill to keep it alive until the disappearances of the workers began, and boxes of wooden puppets appeared to attack. This stage more or less returns to the format of the first stage. You start off roaming the site of the sawmill using your trusty horror monitor to avoid traps and discover secrets. This continues until you discover a strangely familiar wood puppet that you later find to be your lost friend, Randy Fairbanks. Somebody took Randy's brain from his body and inserted it into a wood puppet possessed with his soul. Not too long after that, you as well become a wood puppet and proceed through the majority of the stage in what is my least favorite section. What follows is a lengthy section of you running through mazes and trying to avoid getting into battles with the woodcutters. The only problem with that is they're significantly faster than you and can catch up to you easily. On top of that, you're forced to fight every single one as you cannot escape using the escape ladder like usual. There are actually 3 different things that can happen in this stage involving Randy, which is pretty neat. If you recall from our playthrough, you can save Randy and return his brain to his body, allowing him to join the team. However, there is also a possibility to save Randy without returning his brain, which leads to some unique dialogue. But, again, due to the nature of this playthrough, we must abandon him so that Eriko can do this journey on her own. After returning to our body and having an annoying battle with the 800-year-old tree, we officially conclude the Woodpuppet stage.
Sorry, we're having trouble getting the boss character out. Hold on a second, please. Hey, we got another customer waiting here. Hurry up.
Try turning on the switch again. Okay, here goes. Nah, nothing doing.
This is gonna be a nightmare.
Despite what you may think, taking everything that has happened in the first playthrough into consideration involving this stage, I actually really like the Killer department store. It's kind of cool. There's a lot of variety to it in terms of its structure. There's foreshadowing to things that will happen later on in Illbleed that we'll get into at a later time. Despite all of the bullshit and straight fuck nonsense that stupid puppet Marie subjected me to in the previous playthrough, this stage is awesome, and I'm excited to talk about it again.
The story of this section takes place in the Cashman's department store. The store was run by its manager, Donald Cashman, who, after a string of unfortunate business woes, decided to hold a huge blowout sale to try to save his business. However, little did the patrons of the establishment know that the sale was a front for his dastardly scheme. Cashman would murder all of his patrons and steal their money, feeling like they owed it to him, blaming them for the lack of sales. The police caught word of what he was doing and shot him on sight. However, although Cashman was deceased, his soul remained in the building, granting misfortune to those who entered. This stage is unique in that it pays you the reward up front before you set foot in the building. As I said earlier, the design here is fundamentally the same, however this time the money is the hook of the killer department store. As you encounter traps, not only do you take damage or get scared, but the monsters also take money from you. The goal for this stage is to have a certain amount of money so you can progress and keep as much as possible when everything is said and done. I can break the stage down into two sections. There's the beginning portion where you're doing your typical Illbleed shenanigans, and then there's the other portion when you're playing games with that damn puppet Marie. The first section has you wandering aisles of produce and home goods, from encountering hell cakes to feeding huge hungry beetles so they don't take your head off. There are moments that bookend both of these sections where you're greeted by an odd-looking elevator where you must find Cashman's safe and solve puzzles to take his money. This brings us to the second portion of the stage, playing with Marie.
Wow, you really came to see me. I'm so happy. It's odd because I haven't killed anyone yet today.
If you remember correctly, I didn't have the best time playing with Marie.
This is some messed up crap here.
Oh my god, there's a delay to it.
Nice. Look at all that blood.
Why the wind up?
Don't give me that. All you have to do is hit the A button.
I'm hitting the A button.
Oh,
You can see me over here. I'm hitting that button.
I don't think you're hitting it.
Close. It was close. It was so close.
You got so close with Beaver Bother too.
Stop it.
She'll have you play games like hide and seek, a deadly game of tag, and my least favorite, jump rope.
But hey, that was in the past. A lot's happened since then. I've grown, I've learned to live and forget, and I figured, hey, let's give the jump rope minigame the old college try. Maybe I do better. I'm sorry, Chair. You didn't deserve that.
After completing the final section of Marie's dumb, stupid, silly games, you can open the final safe and move on to the boss, who turns out to be Cashman, but in the form of a giant spider. However, like most things in Illbleed, you quickly discover that things aren't quite the way they seem, as you discover a room with a worker remotely controlling the spider, similar to the towering band below animatronic from Stage 1. Here you take the controls and can have some fun wrecking what I'm sure was an expensive animatronic, bringing this stage to a close.
Cool.
So something unexpected happened, or rather something that I just kind of noticed as I was going through Illbleed a second time with just Eriko. I was stacked with cash, items, upgrades. Like, I didn't have to struggle at all. Like, this playthrough turned out to be super easy in terms of surviving, and I don't know what kind of message that sends, like, hey, abandon your friends and you'll never have troubles in life, but hey, I'll take it, man. This has been a treat.
Until 66 years later, he was back. He had to be. His mark was found on the face of a utility repairman near Central Park. The Manhattan Police Department immediately launched a special task force to investigate the case and hopefully prevent such a thing from happening again.
The Killerman stage is by far the most interesting of the Illbleed stages. The story centers around this infamous killer who originated in New York and is known as the Killerman. The scenario of the stage doesn't take place in New York, but rather in the back rooms of the Illbleed attraction. I find this stage the most interesting because it has a unique whodunit premise and gives you an inside baseball look at the interworkings of Illbleed. It's like going to Disneyland and going behind the scenes to see the various workers, props, and costumes of the Disney attractions, but not in the intended context. You'll also see a lot of props and references to the previous stages you've encountered up until now, which is pretty cool. I mentioned that the stage has a whodunit hook to it. The story opens up with your character in an empty theater. After making your way down to the front, you're able to visit the back rooms of Illbleed, where you discover a dead body with a star burned into his face. Later, you meet a man by the name of George S. Baker, one of the final main playable characters you can save and use in Illbleed. George is a reporter who was brought to Illbleed due to reports of the park's attendees disappearing after visiting, as well as the murders of the park's staff members. George also plays an integral part in Stage 5, as he serves as your character's gumshoe when it comes to learning more about Illbleed, as well as the identity of the Killerman.
What died in here?
Just about everything, duh. It's a morgue, silly.
A morgue?
Yeah, where they keep the stiffs. Illbleed is full of dead bodies. More than 100 visitors die in this park every day. This is where the bodies get burned and forgotten. Not exactly the high point of the park.
This is really weird. It feels like spirits are swirling around my body.
I hear ya. It's like a cold mist.
Your characters discover after meeting a man named Jason that one of the Killerman costumes from the back rooms has gone missing. George requests our character's assistance in finding out who stole the costume and used it to murder the Illbleed staff members. This stage does involve a bit of backtracking, as you'll revisit areas after uncovering new details on the mystery.
That's the Killerman. Look at the way he jumped. You know, I remember reading that Jason used to be a professional gymnast. So it makes sense that he could pull off these Killerman stunts.
Ultimately, the game requires that you guess who the Killerman might be. However, later in the story, George gets kidnapped by zombies, and you're tasked with finding and saving him. However, we cannot save our new friend due to the nature of this playthrough. Because of this, we must abandon George and complete the stage without him. The result is that the identity of the Killerman is lost forever, and we have no way to verify if our answer was true, meaning that we don't collect the $1 million bonus we got in the previous playthrough. Bummer. I said before the Killerman stage was the most exciting stage of Illbleed, but far and away the Toy Hunter stage is possibly the strangest stage, not only in Illbleed, but in most video games. It's the most memorable section of this game by a mile, and for good reason. This section doesn't have you play as any of your characters for most of it. Outside of using your respective character's stats, you spend 90% of the stage playing as a character foreshadowed in the Killer Department Store section, Cork Inda, which is both a reference to Toy Story and Indiana Jones. Cork is an adventurer who, after a long journey, returns home to visit his other toy friends, Sexy Doll and that bitch Marie.
Cork, you're back! I knew you'd be home safe.
I am immortal.
And his Andy-like child owner, Henry.
I'm going to sleep. Good night, doll.
Now, I want you to stick with me as I explain the story of the stage to you. When Cork returns home, he begins to notice something a little strange with his owner Henry. He is not well and is experiencing some headaches. Little does Cork know that the headaches are more than simple migraines, as Henry drops dead. Not only that, but Cork's toy girlfriend is buried alive with Henry as the two are sent to hell.
No!
After spiraling into a deep, dark depression, Cork drowns his sorrows at a milk bar, where he takes his anger out on some eggs and murders them in cold blood. Cork is then sent to jail, where he is sentenced to death, and Cork decides that he must go to hell to be with his girlfriend, Sexy Doll. Suffice to say, that's a lot to take in, and I didn't even get to the part where Cork and his Buzz Lightyear-like friend Potodon come up with a plan to murder another child so Cork can go to hell. This stage is rather straightforward and linear, but it works well. Each of the segments of the story transition well into each other, and I was so fascinated with how weird this section was that I needed to see where it would go. I'm still dumbfounded by how out there it is. This section is pretty much what you'd come to expect at this point. Use the horror monitor to disarm traps and occasionally fight enemies. However, this level does have a twist. In the beginning, you're greeted by another Cork who explains that he's changed the weapons indicator of the horror monitor for a story indicator, and changed the trap's clear condition for a story condition.
This is when you'll receive a monetary reward based on how many stories you saw.
When using the horror monitor, you will be greeted with story opportunities. If you disarm the story, you miss out on that piece of the story, which is a neat idea on paper, but I do somewhat feel like them telling you what a story interaction is versus a jump scare takes a lot of the guesswork out of the section. It's a minor complaint, and I'll be honest, at this point, I was ready to be done playing Illbleed, so I wasn't too beat up about the game throwing me a bone. After you go to hell and are reunited with Sexy Doll, you face the most memorable boss in Illbleed, Zodic the Hellhog. This boss is a reference to Sonic the Hedgehog, who has traits similar to a spin dash and loses rings when you attack him. Once he's defeated, Cork and company fly off into the distance, bringing the final stage of Illbleed to a close.
Tuesday on a cuddly bed. If you like.
Oh, brother, that's about all the salty stuff I can handle for today.
So really at this point, the only thing that's left to do is to go to the museum, face Michael Reynolds, and get the true ending to Illbleed. Full transparency, I've never seen the true ending to Illbleed. I have no idea what's coming. I have never looked it up or read anything about the true ending to Illbleed, and I'm rather excited to experience this with Joe for the first time ever. It could be disappointing. There's always a possibility of that, but it could also be, considering everything that has happened in this game, it could probably be bat insane. So this is where I'm going to end things with this video, and hopefully soon we will have put out the true final episode to our Illbleed playthrough. Thank you guys so much for watching the video and supporting the channel. Despite all of the nonsense, the bullshit that Illbleed has brought to my life over the years, there is just nothing like it. It is a fascinating piece of work that should be studied. It's upsetting to me that this game has never gotten some kind of re-release, HD remaster, limited run collection, because I think a lot of people should experience it for themselves, because there's, like I said, there's truly nothing like it. But like I said, at some point in time, we will be putting out the final episode, bringing the series of Illbleed to its final conclusion. Until then, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, tell us how we're doing, let us know what we could be doing better, and thank you.